Welcome back to the table. Today, Ryan and I are going to give you a look at Shake That City.
And you're shaking it right now.
And I'm shaking it because you actually do that in the game. This is a new game from AEG that is on crowdfunding right now, so you can take a look for their campaign. But we're going to give you a very brief overview, and it's going to be brief because it's probably one of the most accessible games I've played in a long time.
I mean, it's super simple to play.
Yeah.
And like the pitch is super easy too. You literally fill up this city box with cubes, shake it, and then you drop cubes out in a pattern that is 3x3. If you can do that,
you can play the game.
You can play the game. It's super accessible. It's super easy to play. And I will say, yes, maybe people will say this is gimmicky, but it's not. It's so much fun. And the fact that it presents you with this random 3x3 pattern, I've not seen an element like this in a game that lets you have such a distribution of cubes like this.
Yeah, you really could. I mean, if you didn't have this sort of device here, you'd have to use an app or something like that.
You'd have to get
and this is really kind of cool. I mean, I like building things, and this was cardboard that came, I punched it, you folded it, you actually put a rubber band around it, and I'm not going to push this thing, but
because the cubes will fall out.
You push this thing, you shake it around, and cubes will fill up those 9 spaces, and it'll drop 9. Now, sometimes more than that comes out, but typically it's 9 cubes dropped right out in that grid like there.
For being a prototype, it feels very sturdy, and it's worked very well for the game because these 9 cubes are basically the cubes you're going to draft from in order to place tiles on your board. So that's the second part of the game. And again, it's super easy because anyone at the table can do this. You simply just choose a color, and you're going to place that color's pattern on your player board. And these player boards are going to have space for a lot of different tiles. What you're seeing here are our completed games.
Yeah, this is a game finished.
So this is what it will look like when it's done, but you'll see that you're placing these in different arrangements. So if I was to take green, I'd have to place green tiles out in that very specific arrangement. Of course, there's more to it than just choosing a color.
Yeah.
You're trying to fit it for one thing. You're trying to score different points. You're trying to fulfill the requirements of some bonus tiles. So there is still a lot that you're trying to do. It's not that the game is simple, it's just easy to play, I would say.
Yeah, easy to play, but it's got some depth, particularly when you think about that puzzle of trying to fit things on the board and keeping scoring in mind for sure. So, let's tell you about the game. It is a city building game, if you hadn't figured that out. It's called Shake That City.
So yeah.
You drop those cubes every round. There's going to be 15 of them. You drop those cubes, and whoever the active player is, by the way, that's the person who gets to shake the city, they pick first, and they're going to pick one of the colors. Now, you don't take any of these cubes. You're simply going to choose one color, and then you take the corresponding tiles of that color, and you place them on your board. Now, you have to place those in this orientation. Mm-hmm. You can't rotate or anything like this.
Can't flip, can't mirror,
can't do
rotate.
any of that. And in fact, one interesting point is, depending on how you're sitting around the board, like we're sitting in one place, so we're both looking at the cubes the same way, you can actually have people all around the table, and then you just change the orientation of your player board such that you're effectively looking at the cubes in the same way that the active player is looking at them, so that it kind of keeps things even. But once the active player has chosen those colors, and this can be done pretty simultaneously, all of the other players can choose a color too, but they cannot choose the color of the active player, which kind of feels a little bit like a roll and write and things like that in terms of when you're drafting dice. Active player gets something, everyone else gets to pick from the leftovers. You're going to do that over 15 turns, putting tiles on your board, keeping in mind that you have to be able to place them. So if I don't have a place for 3 greens in that orientation, meaning there's maybe some other tiles already placed, things like that, I cannot legally take those. And there are going to be times where that, becomes a challenging puzzle to navigate within. Also, you're trying to navigate all of the various scoring at the end of the game. You're going to have scoring for each different colored tile for different things. You put gray roads and you want to connect those to the edges of the board. Houses don't want to be all cluttered into one area. They want to have separate neighborhoods. You're going to get points like that. But all of the different tiles score in different manners. Again, like many games, conflicting with one another at times. So
Often, yes.
You're going to have to figure out where you want to get your points and where you're going to have to give up some points.
Yeah, sometimes taking a specific pattern and realizing that maybe 2 of the cubes score a lot of points, but that third cube might even negate some points from something else that you scored. You've got to decide if those points are still worth it. Plus, you're going to have these bonus tiles out around the edge of your board. And these are going to be determined randomly by the first player, so you're going to use an assortment of them, and then every other player at the table is going to copy their orientation. So you're all kind of fighting for the same exact goals, so the boards are identical, so nobody's going to get an unfair advantage or anything. And all of these want you to have certain things in the row, either maybe 4 different kinds of colored buildings or a fully complete row that has full tiles. Once you do that, you actually get to flip it over like you might see here and score 3 points for doing that. So in addition to scoring all of the regular tiles, you're also worried about if you can make these conditions and score 3 extra points. I mean, this can be a lot of points if you can get all these tiles flipped.
Oh, for sure. And oftentimes getting those things to work together so you're maximizing both is great. But in other cases, you may go, you know what, I'm sacrificing my blue points because I'm not getting good blue points anyway. So I'm just going to focus on the rest of this row so that I can snag these 3 or maybe these 3 points.
Yeah, a lot of tiles are worth 0 points if they're next to something that you don't want them to be next to. So they do cancel themselves out. So if that seems like there's a lot you have to think about when you're placing any one individual tile, I would say there is a lot.
There's a fair amount to think about. I mean, the first thing, though, is just whether or not you can place the thing. I mean, I was generally happy just being able... Late in the game, you have a lot of tiles on here, and you're thinking, okay, well, I can't take green, I can't take gray. And then oftentimes there'll be one where it's just a single blue or a single of a certain color. Those, of course, they're singles, so you can place them in any single spot, which is really nice because while you're not putting a lot of tiles on your board, you might be able to put it in the perfect position to score points.
Yeah, so if that seems like a lot to you, that's great. I mean, there is a lot going on. If it doesn't, if it seems maybe like you're saying, oh, well, this is so simple, you're just putting tiles down, there is an advanced mode.
Yes.
Which we didn't play because we were scared of the advanced mode.
I mean, not too scared, but we were starting with this one.
We wanted to always, I think always start with the beginner mode. That's just kind of how I feel.
Yeah, the advanced mode is kind of interesting. There's these sort of construction tiles that, again, the first player randomly sets up in a diagonal across the center of their board, and then everyone else mimics that. Those tiles are places where you cannot build a building tile throughout the game until you've moved the construction tile. And each construction tile is effectively 2 of the colors. And if on somewhere else on your board, say there's a construction tile that's red and green, you've put a red and a green adjacent to one another, that allows you to unlock that and remove it from the board. The real big rub of this, because now that's a place you can build, but at the end of the game, if you haven't taken all of the construction tiles off your board, you're not qualified to win the game. So it is the thing you have to do. You have to do. So this is just another one of those variables where you're like, okay, I'm trying to score these points, I'm trying to score the end game points, and now I'm also having to place certain tiles adjacent to one another in order to remove these construction tiles.
And you can't forget to do that too. And I think that that's a good thing to have that advanced mode for people that want to game with their kids. They can play the beginner mode, but then if they're just gaming with other gamers, you can play that more advanced mode. And there's also a solo mode as well.
Yeah, so if you have any questions at all about Shake That City, make them in the comments below. We'll answer literally every single question you have about the game because there's not a lot to say about how simple it is to play, but when it comes to the depth, there's probably a little bit more than you'd expect.
Yeah, for sure.
And until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.